Okay, so this is verse 5 of Lagyu, Vakya, Vritti. In the waking state, even silence in the mind is illumined by pure consciousness. Activities of the mind are also illumined by consciousness together with the reflection of consciousness. This is a really brilliant, this is a really, really, really good verse. This verse and the next verse is are really, really good. Let's see. So you can see everybody good. Okay. So even in the waking mind, consciousness still shines. When we are awake, experience, it is reflected consciousness. By the way, this verse and the next verse are crucial for bridging the gap between knowledge and experience. It's in these two verses that the yanam from these two verses will help the person assimilate enlightenment. It will help the person attain moksha. So experience, it's reflected consciousness, but it isn't pure consciousness because it's conditioned. We're going to look at what that means, what this word conditioned means. So experience isn't pure consciousness. Experience is conditioned consciousness. But is there a time when you're awake, when we are awake, that unconditioned pure consciousness is present? Yes, there has to be, of course, because pure consciousness is all it is. But yes, when the intellect is in the condition of quietness, when the mind is silent, it's okay saying that, of course. When does that happen? In the waking state, when does that happen? So the question is that, is it possible for the mind to be quiet when we are awake? And Swamiji Tarapananda teaches in the Mandukya Karika about the gap between two thoughts. Because noticing the gap, usually our thoughts are so fast, so rapid, so many, they seem that they overlap each other. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to try to focus on one thought and try to find the gap. Swamiji says find the gap. So we look at meditation. Meditation, it's a special awakened state. If we're looking at chanting Om, we chant Om, Om, Om. That's a repetitive vritti, a repetitive thought in the mind. But that thought itself is also conditioned consciousness. Okay. So what we're actually looking for, and this is what we're looking for in Omkara Vichara, in the Omkara meditation. When we're doing the meditation, we need to know what the mantra means. But that's one part. But the other part is we're looking for that gap. We're trying to identify with that unconditioned, non-conditioned consciousness. Trying to identify with the silence. We're trying to notice the silence first. We're trying to notice the gap in between the mantras. And once we notice the gap, then we identify with as the gap. In Omkara Vichara, in Mandukya, that gap is Turiya, which that gap is Brahman. And so we identify as that gap. Unconditioned consciousness. So once one mantra ends and before the next begins, There's a gap of silence. Yeah. Um, there's a gap. And this is the intellect. It's in a temporary state of silence, or the intellect is temporary silent, temporary silent, the better way of putting it. If we're looking at an expanse of water, there will be no ripples in the water. The water is the mind, and there will be no ripples in the water. There will be no thoughts in the mind. For that point, specific point in time, before the next mantra is recited, once the next mantra is recited, then that's the ripple. Okay. It's the deliberate ripple. As time goes on in Vedanta, it will be like if we're looking at chanting of Om. We begin, we'll chant Om. We chant it for a long, long time, and the gap will be small in between. Swamis have been doing this for a long time. They will maybe chant Om, Om. So the gap's longer, okay, because their mind's at rest longer. The mind's silent longer, so they're resting in that silence longer. Okay. So let's say we have an expanse of water, and there's no ripples in the water. The light shines down onto the water. The light's still reflected, so it's still reflected consciousness, but it's not conditioned, as there are no ripples. So the reflection is pure light. And likewise in the mind, whenever there are no thoughts, it's a perfect reflection of pure consciousness. Remember that we looked at this in Vakya. Pure consciousness is in Sakshi, illumines the mind, which is reflected consciousness. So the two are not the same in this context, or else there's no discrimination. Okay, there has to be something to discriminate. So even if the mind is silent, it's still reflected consciousness, but it's a reflection of pure consciousness. Pure. I'm just saying the way we say pure in Northern Ireland is really funny. Pure. That sounds funny. Okay, so okay. When our minds are full of thoughts, that reflected consciousness, it's very, very much conditioned. But in those moments where there are no thoughts, and it is possible, as we can see from meditation, then the reflected consciousness, it's unconditioned. And in those moments of unconditioned consciousness, pure consciousness is present. But there's a problem. Is pure consciousness only present when the mind's quiet, when the mind is unconditioned, when there's unconditioned consciousness? That wouldn't make any sense either. So what about when the mind's busy? When there are loads of thoughts, is pure consciousness present then? And of course, the answer has to be yes, because pure consciousness is all it is. So we can see what we're doing here. We're trying to explain something from two different angles. We're trying to still maintain that. We're trying to make a difference, a distinction between now pure consciousness, reflected consciousness, and conditioned consciousness, while still maintaining that there only is pure consciousness. Okay. And this takes time to understand and assimilate, because it's not easy. Conditioning is complex. Life is complex. It's not as easy as saying that Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. So this is where, so it's easy to know that you're a Brahman, but this is where the work is here now in this part. This is relaying the knowledge that you are Brahman to the experience of the person. Okay. And the truth is that all activities of the mind are illumined by consciousness, along with reflected consciousness. Ripples are illumined by light. The ripples on a pond are illumined by light, the light shining down. So light is present, falling upon the ripples, and light's also present in the reflection, of course. How can you see the reflection without the light? From the reflection, okay. So that means that consciousness, it's present in the mind, but consciousness is also present in experience. Light is present in the ripples, or you couldn't see the ripples. No? So consciousness has to be present in the thoughts. And this is Pratibimbavada, the theory of reflection. And now it's really pleasing for me because we're going to, like I said before, I don't have to be politically correct. Pratibimbavada is one of the most important prakriyas in Vedanta, but it wasn't the one that I took to. The one that I took to is the one we're going to look at now, is Avachetavada. It's far more easier for me. As some people in Vedanta, they will be able to attain enlightenment through the karna, karya, and prakriya, the cause and effect prakriya. Others may approach it, have success with it through Ajatavada, non-origination of creation. But all these ways reach the same way. It's just that people's conditioning is general, but also conditioning is quite specific as well. So that's why Vedanta seems to contradict itself a lot, but it's approaching this whole thing to do with conditioning in multiple ways at multiple times. So Avachetavada shows that experience itself is conditioned consciousness. We look at a wave in the ocean. The wave is conditioned water, isn't it? It's still water, it's conditioned water. But there is only water. The wave is water with a particular form. Yeah? So experience is consciousness with a certain form superimposed upon it. The wave is a certain form of water. The wave is a certain form superimposed on the ocean. Superimposed on, oh, let me rephrase that. The wave is a certain form superimposed on water itself. Yeah, okay. And experience is form. On Avachetavada, it explains experience. So this text now is going to move from Pratibimbavada to Avachetavada. Avachetavada is the theory of limitation. Pratibimbavada is the theory of reflection. So the mind is illumined by consciousness. The vrittis, the thoughts in the mind, are illumined by consciousness. But so too is experience. Pure consciousness, it's also present in experience. The external event and the internal perception, both. Okay. Pure consciousness is present always in experience. Swami Ramananda, Swamiji teaches that to make a difference, we can make a difference between form and content. Me and Ian spoke about this kind of things in the group sometimes, between form and content. Pratibhimbavada, we have light and its reflection. But avachara vada, it means conditioning. And the way that I generally speak about is usually conditioning. That's why, because this was the prakriya. This was the avachara vada was the prakriya where it most benefit to me. So us now, we're having an experience of a Vedanta text. But what's the content of that experience? What is the content of the wave? The subject matter that we're speaking about now isn't the content. The subject matter is the form. Okay. Anything that we can pin down into what we'll say loosely a thing, or something that we can define, is the form. It's not the content, it's the form. Okay. So dog, cat, husband, wife, life, money, car, holiday, sunshine, lockdown, COVID, whatever you want. It's all, that's form, okay? Everything that we can name and form is form. Okay. So we're having an experience of a Vedanta text, but what's the content of that experience? So we ask ourselves, what's the content of a wave? So we see the content is different from the wave. The wave is the form. The wave is the name and form, but it's not the content. The content has to be something else. Else the question is nonsensical. What's the content of a wave? Water. What's the content of the pot? Clay. The form is conditioned, the wave is conditioned, the pot is conditioned, but the content is pure. Pure water, pure clay, or pure consciousness. This is very, 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 very important. Because if we get this, we'll either attain our goal or we'll be very close to attaining our goal. Because this is here right now, this is where we assimilate the jnanam. This is where we bring in the teachings of Vedanta from theory, from intellectual to experiential. The pot, it's conditioned clay, but it's still clay, yeah? So this experience is conditioned consciousness, but it's still consciousness, okay? So ultimately there's only clay, ultimately there's only consciousness. Because the form is not a second thing. We have, looking at it now, we have wave. Is it the second thing to water? Obviously not. It's ridiculous to think otherwise, isn't it? The pot, is it a second thing to clay? Of course not. How can it be? So how is experience second thing to consciousness? Well, it can't be. So at this point, it starts to look ridiculous to think otherwise. Because, and we're going to have resistance to understanding, assimilating that experience. That experience is not a second thing in regard to consciousness. But then we remember that a wave is not a second thing in regard to water. A clay is not a second thing in regard to pot. And the gold bracelet is not a second thing in regard to gold. We go on like this forever till the light bulb comes upon our head. It's obvious, isn't it? It's obvious. But our conditioning will keep bringing us out of this obvious jnanam. And what we do then is we just keep bringing it back. Okay? We'd be more stubborn than the bloody conditioning. So, so the form is not a second thing. It's very, very clear now. So conditioning is not a second thing. How can it be? And this is crucial to enlightenment. Conditioning is not a second thing. Anything we see around us is not a second thing. There's nothing that's a second thing. It only appears to be a second thing or third thing or fourth thing. I have water in my hand, we have clay in my hand, and I have a gold bracelet in my wrist. Are they separate from those? Is the wave separate from the water? Is the pot separate from clay? Is the bracelet separate from the gold? No, no, no. So this yanam, we just have to hold on to whenever we're going about our daily business and retrain our perception. Our mind's still going to pick up waves and pots and gold jewelry. But in our mind, we retrain ourselves just to see that which is the underlying reality. Water, clay, gold, consciousness. And the reason why this is really, really important is because this takes away obviously it takes away this idea of separation, of difference, of limitation, of change. If we focus on waves and we focus on change, if we focus on pot, we focus on change, and gold bracelets, we focus on change. But if we focus on that which is the underlying reality, then there is no change. So this experience, it's conditioned. This experience is conditioned experience, but its content, it's pure consciousness. Pure consciousness expressed as, get this right, if expressed is the right word. Pure consciousness expressed as conditioned experience. Yeah, okay. Like, isn't that amazing? What's the separation? What's the difference? What is Dvaita? What is duality then? It's only an appearance. It's only an appearance. It's not actual. So how does this help? We think that experience and object are things, but they're not. There's only form, which is those objects, of content, which is consciousness, form of consciousness. Okay. So the content is consciousness. All content, all content of all form is consciousness. So we have no longer, since the content of all form is consciousness, we can drop the word all, because that reinforces separation as well. So there only is consciousness, Advaita, non-duality, but it's still the same form. I can look at 20 waves and still know it's water. Yeah, you can as well. Look, many times you look at the ocean and see hundreds of waves, but you know it's still water. Yeah. Okay. So we're now at the end of this verse, and there's going to be another transition here, and we're going to really go into a brilliant metaphor. Swamiji Swaminathananda loves this metaphor to do with the Avacchedavada. And so that will be in the next class. So guys, any questions? 9 minutes.
How? Yeah, I have a remark and a question. And the remark is, when we came to that point somewhere, I got really tears in my eyes. Of course, I know all along that there's only consciousness and name and form, but somehow every time you say something like that, for the past 5 minutes, I get tears in my eyes.
Because the yanam is so simple here now. It's so simple, this yanam. It's so beautiful. It's so, how can you not love what Shankaracharya has taught here, because it's just is so simple. It's it's exceptional, because I don't know what, it depends on the person, but for me, like I said, Pratibhambha Vada was harder for me, but Avachara Vada is where it just was really fell into place for me. And Swami Tadatmananda really likes this as well. Like he even says it as MP3s, but it's so this just takes, for me, it takes away all this notion of separation, of difference, of comparison, judgments, whatever. There's no need for any of that there, because since form is only, since the content of form, of all forms, is only consciousness, it means there only is consciousness, which means I, whatever the heck I is, has to be consciousness. So I am consciousness. There's no way around that. So aham brahmasmi. I am Brahman, you are Brahman. There's no way around it. Yeah. Brahman is consciousness. So how can you not be consciousness? It doesn't make any sense. So we identify completely as Brahman. Aham brahmasmi. I am Brahman, you are Brahman. And then we feed this yanam into the mind's condition, and it will address the separation, the difference.
Yeah, it's really, really touching. I'm totally surprised by that.
Yeah. It's really beautiful. Also, as well, it helps clear away so much crap in our minds as well. And the way Swami Tadatmananda has explained this, and he teaches it the way Swami Puja Swamiji Swami Dayananda taught it, and it goes right back to Shankaracharya. And it's just a beautiful way to explain everything. And like I said, this is even in this prakriya itself, or these two prakriyas, but even this prakriya here, we're identifying with as consciousness, but also we're not disregarding life in any kind of way. We're still accepting there's form. So we are, so there's no bypass or anything like that. It's just it means like it's like another, oh my God, thank God moment, really. That's what it is. Yeah. Okay, guys, any other questions?
I just have one thing.
Oh, okay. A short one. He said this is we call this experience conditioned experience, but every experience is conditioned.
Sure.
Consciousness, conditioned.
Every experience is conditioned, so it's a generic experience. Generally, the totality of experience is conditioned. Experience is conditioned consciousness. So even individual experiences are all conditioned consciousness. The form is whatever experience you give it. Going to the shop, eating food, going to sleep, listening to Vedanta, meditation. The form is whatever you place, whatever the form. The form is whatever the form is, but the content of every single form is consciousness. Okay? Yeah. So the form is conditioned. The form is conditioned, whereas the content of that form is not conditioned. It can't be. It's pure consciousness. Okay. So the form of water is the wave, but the water is unconditioned, pure. The form of the pot, the form is the pot, but the unconditioned. So it's conditioned, but what is unconditioned is clay, and likewise for gold and the bracelet.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Judy.
Judy. No. Okay. Sure. Okay. Okay, guys. Any other questions? So, guys, this because this is so important, what we have to do then is we have to apply this to our moment-to-moment conditioning, because we're conditioned in samsara to see separation and difference, and the eyes will still, the sight, the pramana of sight will still pick up separation and difference, but we're training our mind to not perceive the separation and difference while still perceiving separation and difference. Okay, guys. Good? Yes? Okay. See you next time. Bye-bye. Namaste. Bye-bye.